Everything changed. Everything changed when we lost Mike. And the exhibition, which was conceived as a thematic exhibition, really looking at various themes that run through his work, really changed profoundly.
We have a very unique building here that we work with, obviously. Its history as a public school that became a museum ties into so many aspects of Mike's work in interesting ways. He was so interested in how education, how our homes, our upbringings affect us as people, make us who we are. So to have the work here in a school itself, a school and a museum brought together, adds a really interesting context to the work.
This was a work that was in the institutional hallway, and a very early iteration of his ideas of kind of interrogating institutions and educational institutions in particular. And he took this idea of a hall of great men, 42 banners, each hand-painted, with a quote by a different artist, historical figure, politician, author, literary figure, each with a quote that talks about how artists should not have to be bound by the law. And then you walk down this hallway and encounter a work at the very end by somebody named Arthur Shawcross, who had been a serial killer here in New York State. Everywhere it's shown, it has to have a work added. It's mandated by Mike that is added by an actual criminal who made art in prison.
For many years, Mike Kelley collected yearbook photos, photographs of people who he didn't know from schools that he did not attend. Using these anonymous yearbook photos as a starting point, Mike scripted elaborate dramas. He photographed what he called extracurricular activity projective reconstructions. Mike originally intended the project to comprise 365 of these works, and eventually finished 32. They combine many of the stage set elements with the images that were shot, the footage that was shot, and photographs that combine the original work that Mike used as a reference point and the tableau that he shot with the subsequent actors made up to match.
This work, which is the John Glenn Memorial, is part of this larger project which encompasses this whole room called Blackout, which is a project that Mike made about and in Detroit, his hometown where he grew up. This centerpiece uses this kind of icon of his childhood and the idea that we have these heroes in our childhood and this city that he had a very complex relationship to. And he made this very large statue covered with all this detritus that he literally dredged out of the Detroit River. Mike couldn't ever go back to Detroit, yet he always had this desire to return to those roots.
I think another interesting body of work that threads throughout his practice looks at the home as an institution. His first mature body of work, his graduate thesis show at Cal Arts, was a group of homemade birdhouses, something he returns to much, much later in his work, where he includes an off-the-shelf birdhouse accompanying one of the Candor models that he made, which were based on Superman's home city on the planet of Krypton. Mike began thinking about that in 1999 when he created a work presented almost as a trade show announcing the future of a utopian village. Of course, Mike was in part satirizing the utopian city that never came to pass, as utopias of all sorts were things that Mike was very skeptical of.
Each of these projects connects to his life, but they connect to the common experiences that all of us have in a relationship to our society, our culture, our families, and I think that's what is so incredibly profound and resonant and meaningful and very fresh about the work.